Thank you, Maria. How's everybody doing? Have a good lunch? Let's start with a little bit of audience participation. It's after lunch, got to get the circulation going. How many people use an AI tool more than once a day? Whoa, wow. Because there's no point in asking the other two. Okay. Gartner just released a survey about 5-6 days ago, the first quarter 26 labor survey, about 14,000 people. And it's called the enablement illusion, which is giving a bit of a cheat sheet on some of the numbers. But how many people think that of the employees, these 14,000 employees surveyed, that they said that they saved 0 time in their day? How many think it's less than 10% that saves 0 time? No, that's a little too skeptical. Okay, how about less than 20%? How about less than 30%? Okay, the actual number was 19%. So 19% of those 14,000 saved 0 time despite using AI. Then they surveyed the executives, and the executives were saying how many of them have a comprehensive AI strategy. So how many people think there's 30% or more executives have a comprehensive AI strategy? 20% or more. It's actually 27%. So 27% of executives have a comprehensive strategy. But worse, how many of those executives think that their employees are ready to use AI in the workplace? More than 10%? More than 20%? It's actually exactly 20%. So that's why we're doing this panel. We're not really ready. We're a bit out there. So I'm very pleased to present my panel. I have Cristina, and I have Rob, and I have Linda, and Susanna, and Martin, and Oleg, although you guys switched places, didn't you? Okay. I tried to do boy, girl, and they didn't really,
We did it yesterday, it was the same. So we do not change.
So I'm going to start by asking my friend Cristina. So Cristina, Share PLM works directly with PLM adoption. Yep. And of course, you guys have the Nest, which we got to enjoy last night. Thank you very much. Communication and learning. In the AI era, what do PLM professionals need to relearn first?
So what I would say is you all raise your hand or most of you raise your hand when you're saying that you are working with AI tools on a daily basis. I think something that we get many times is confusing answers. We think they sound super convincing, but they are not true most of the time. So we still have to train that AI. And I think something that we have to relearn first is to have that judgment and that critical thinking to identify whether that is a right or wrong answer, whatever you want to use it for making decisions. Excellent answer. That kind of corresponds to what the startup founders are telling me when I'm asking that question. They're saying fundamentals, critical thinking. Rob, so you've been more of a consultant, a PLM consultant, and you've seen lots of programs from implementation to consulting, and we saw some interesting examples, for example, from Andreas today, which was a really great presentation. Thanks, by the way, to all the presenters so far. Fantastic job. So what does AI actually change in the execution of PLM, and what doesn't change at all?
I think there's 3 types of change that we can think about. The first type of change is the day-to-day operations. So what I'm talking about is, for example, you have high collaboration at the moment and information gathering and people sending information back and forth, etc. And I think the way that is going to change is that you'll start to see AI taking on some of that workload, gathering information and giving the information to people to make decisions. So the actual exercise of, for example, if you make a change, finding out what the implications are of the change, that is still required, so that stays the same, but just the way it's executed is going to change. The other type of change is business model change. So I don't know if companies realize just how impacted they're going to be with the potential for the way that their business model is going to be affected. And that has a knock-on implication then to their PLM architecture. So the PLM architecture has to become a lot more fluid, a lot more flexible. It has to be adaptable so that it can adapt to the business model requirements. So that's change, and what doesn't change about that is the fundamentals around, the importance of product information flow, breaking down silos, and all of the core topics that are the universal language of PLM. And finally, the other change is really the mindset change that we're all going to have to go through, because I think we're very at a very low level of AI understanding ourselves. And so we're going to have to go through a huge mental leap as we experience it and as we learn more. So that's a big change. And at the same time, I think we should not lose sight of the core things that make us humans. That shouldn't change. And also some of the basics around how you operate as a business and the importance of things like communication.
Thank you, Rob. Linda, from the manufacturing industrial side, because you're coming from industry, where do you see AI becoming the most useful? Is it going to be useful first in engineering, manufacturing, sourcing, service, handoffs?
Yeah, good question. I think that in the hands of through the life cycle. So, for example, from engineering to manufacturing side. So, what changes we have done, how it is impacting to the manufacturing, who needs to act, for example. But I think that the bigger benefits of AI, how I see it, is that once we have the digital thread in place, so starting from product management, engineering, manufacturing, services, install base to the customer side, is that we could basically see that what issues the customers are having and in which products, in which model variants we are having those issues. So we can basically track those issues back to the product management and engineering. Not just separate tickets, but really patterns, I would say. So I think that there we have really big benefits coming.
So the continuous improvement loop.
In a way, continuous improvement, but for example, if services are going to customer site and customers facing some kind of issue, we can basically then track that what kind of issue it is. Is it coming because of some engineering decision or already with some variants or configuration from our products, so we can send that information back to where it was firstly defined, and then we can act on it.
Thank you for that answer. Susanna, so from a enterprise, and you're coming from the pharmaceutical industry, which is well known to be very regulated, but you've also told us how everything's regulated in some way or another. What changes when AI enters the work of product life cycle? Where does it help, and where does it become too risky in terms of regulatory compliance?
I think there's similarities, what Rob already mentioned, that there's this opportunity to better gather information across complex, big organization, to get ideas, get prompts of what could be done better. So if we think of product changes, understanding the opportunities, what could we do with our portfolio, I think that's where we can get a lot more ideas easy. And that's in a huge organization, a big benefit, because you always have deep silos between functions. But when it comes to the regulations, I think there's a fine line of managing the hype of applying AI everywhere. That when we come to that core product defining information, we need to really frame that into where's the authoritative source of that information. Because it may be in multiple places in your data architecture, but you need to really have a definition where is that true source of truth, that your AI engines don't pick it up from multiple places and treat them equally. So I think that's where, at least in our organization, we need to balance that some of the basics of who's owning the data, who's defining the data, and what's the evidence, that needs to stay somehow much more controlled and not to get into the same co-pilot day-to-day application.
All right, so clean separation of actionable data, and that's really good. It also reminded me a little bit of Javier's presentation about Carry, right? Because the food industry also has a lot of that traceability stuff. Martin, you're, of course, one of the grandfathers, or the grandfather of PLM. From an architecture and systems engineering perspective, does AI reduce the need for a clean PLM architecture, or does it make the architecture even more primordial than before?
By the way, I would like to mention I'm not Waldo from the Muppet Show, but grandfather is okay. Yeah, first thanks for all the presentation in the morning. I really like it, because PLM is a little bit ambivalent for me. What we get delivered from the solution providers is PDM. PLM in the original semantical meaning means product lifecycle management along the product lifecycle. So it's much more, and we have seen in the presentation, it's marked up. So, but our mandate, when we use this PLM philosophy, our mandate is to orchestrate highly complex interdisciplinary products and connected systems along the product lifecycle. And this should be supported by AI as well for design support, and I'm coming more from the administration process, even for the admin processes. So that is my first statement. The next is what could be the solution. We have seen in the morning, and that's my recommendation too, and others. We are not able to change the fragmented, isolated legacy system structure right now. So what can we do? We can extract the data from the legacy system and build up what I call an umbrella, a semantic umbrella on top of the legacy system. We call it digital thread. That is step one. We think about step two. We added reasoning that we call product memory, but let's stay with the digital thread. So the digital thread is, for me, the representation from our original discussion, what we have end of the 90s, what is PLM as a philosophy. So now you ask regarding the architecture. First comment, AI is not substituting an architecture, it's a consumer of architecture. And so I feel we have two gaps in architecture. The one is a context gap. When we deliver or extract data from ALM, PLM, requirement management, ERP, whatever, then we have a context PLM, a context ALM, a context ERP, and that's, for the first, it's standalone. So we have to bring this partial context together. I push my customer to use a common part number or to map the part numbers between. So it's very easy to map. When we bring together ALM, CAD, MCAD, ECAD software, PLM or PDM and MRP, we can deliver 80% of the so-called configuration items. Configuration items, ISO 10007, is very important because that all the related information objects related to change management, quality management, release management. So then we can cover a big amount, but we have to build up the context. An agent and is not able to work without context. He's not able to produce reliable, validate planning and execution. And the technology gap, it's there because what we need is open interface. SAP has restricted the interface 2 weeks ago. Open interface, we have a code for PLM openness in Germany from the ProSep organization. We need open protocols like MCP, very important. We need something like graph databases. I think a digital thread is a lot of recursive operations not able to handle on a relational database. We need graph database. And very important, is often forgotten, we need the protection of the intellectual property, and we need an overarching access mechanism. Because all the different systems have separate access mechanism, we have to bring something on top which brings everything together.
Boy, I think the PLM Santa Claus is going to be really busy with that Christmas list there.
Yeah. I think the digital thread, to show a nice example, is like Pareto, 20%, 80% effort. The rest is 80%, to guarantee the data access and the intellectual property. Yeah, that's.
Thank you, Martin. Oleg, you've written and you write prolifically about PLM's limits and closed systems, rigid data models, difficult integrations. Does AI make PLM more important, or does it expose how much PLM needs to change?
Well, I think, again, let's just reframe a little bit. I have a good news and bad news. So first, it's just a new technology. So we can consider that technology will not be used, and then everything stay the same. Make it more difficult, make it easier. I think what is the most important part in what it will change is that it changed the way we work, and it changed the workflows, because some workflows that were logical in the previous, before AI, might not be relevant, and I think Martin and Rob and everyone else were speaking about this. It works differently, and because it works differently, it will change the architecture. It will change how we use it, and I think from the absolute majority of people that raised their hands and said we use AI today, I think the confirmation that people will use it and will figure out how to use it, and will force systems and architecture to change. I think it will be a little bit similar to cloud. You remember, and we ask, are you going to use cloud? No, it's impossible. But then everyone put files on Dropbox. Remember, right? So it's the same as here. Now it will change everything. It will change architecture.
And I suppose they can come to your workshop tomorrow to learn more. Yes. So now I wanted to go into what I call the triangle discussion. So I'm going to start with the triangle over there, the three people in the corner, and we're going to talk about how work actually changes thanks to AI. And then we'll talk about workflow after that. So I'll start with a question to Linda. I'll trick you for the first one. Where does AI help most in daily industrial work? Finding information, connecting it to manufacturing, quality? You were already talking about the interfaces and about the context, but where does the work actually change, the work of the engineer actually change thanks to AI?
I would like to scope it wider than just engineering.
Sure.
So basically the whole business. I see that currently we are struggling on finding the data. We have a lot of data, we have documentation, but those are really like all over, spread it over, all over. So I think that, of course, we need to change something on our way of working, but I think that what AI can do is to find the correct information and basically make it available. And then with the available data, we can do correct decisions much quicker than we do now.
Okay, that's fair. Rob, does AI reduce the need for consultants, or does it increase the demand for people who understand process data and politics?
What it does is it changes the demand, so it changes it in the way that what you're going to get from the consultant is different. So you've got people like Nina, for example, where it's not going to change the content of her work at all. She's just going to get more busy fixing implementation disasters. But you have other big consultancy companies where you have a lot of effort that was previously put into, pulling together presentations, summaries, performing interviews. And for example, I'm working on some tech which is going to, replace the work of 50 consultants in terms of contacting and reaching out to employees, and that's going to happen for the cost of less than half a consultant. So the type of work is going to change, and also you go and talk to KK Wind Solutions, for example, and they've already done their homework in the past. 10 years ago, if you went and talked to them, they wouldn't be informed about PLM, but because of the tools that are available, they already have a good level of understanding before you even come in and speak to them. So it really does change the value proposition from consultancy companies. So consultancy companies are going to, I talked to someone yesterday that says that they're expecting to lose 40% of their time and material billing that they had in the past, but at the same time, they will be growing more than 40% in activities around AI strategy, consulting, and implementation. So it's going to be give and take, but it's going to fundamentally change the type of activity and the value proposition from the consulting company.
Thank you, Rob. Cristina, it's sort of similar to the first question I asked you, but still, because that's really the core of Share PLM. What new skills matter the most? Is it prompting, like how I prompt the LLM? Is it data literacy? Is it process thinking? Is it verification, or is it really change leadership? What's the most critical piece?
It's confusing, right? There are many things going on around AI. And I would say the first thing is going back to the fundamentals, as Rob was mentioning in the beginning. So you need to have a clear understanding of the big picture and the business as such. I would say a second point is to check the AI inputs to make sure they are right or not right, because you are going to make decisions based on that. And the third one, and that's where we also shine as well at Share PLM, is how to help people adopt the AI, right? So for the like prompting, I think it's, I wouldn't say it's, how you say,
Overhyped?
No, like you think it's too complex, and actually it's a technique. You just need to learn how to do it, but you really need to understand the business. And for example, when an engineer goes and tries to find the data, as Linda was saying as well, that's going to be faster, but he's not only finding the data, he needs to make sure that information is correct. And he needs to understand what is the impact of that data or the change of data in manufacturing or any downstream processes, right? So yeah, that for me it's a very important thing. And the third thing that I was mentioning, the adopting AI in the company, it's we need to show people where they can use AI and where it doesn't make sense to use AI, or to be careful. There are things like you were saying, Rob, summaries or presentations where you don't need to have that high judgment, but maybe there are other things that have big impacts in what you are delivering to customers or wherever, and there you need to be very careful. So yeah, like all in all, I think it's important to set some rules to educate the people. Otherwise, it's going to be messy. It's just another tool, another technology, but no one is adopting it, or everyone is using it in their own way, which is even worse.
Thank you, Cristina. For triangle number 2, so it'll be this group here, we'll talk about workflow and how processes are changing by AI. So, Oleg, since I ended with you, I'll start with you this time. Do AI agents push us away from rigid workflow automation towards more flexible, intent-driven processes across systems?
Well, I think what happens is that agents, or whatever we call them now, I think they will be used differently, and as a result of this, the entire workflow is going to change. And again, if you think about this, like everyone raised their hands and said that we use AI in certain ways. So no one took the formal education and change, but we applied a new skill, and we try and we see how it can change the workflow. Like, for example, we have customer who said, every part I use, I go to Perplexity and I change it now. Did it change the workflow? Oh yeah. So, and if tomorrow will be agent that will be checking particular data in the context of the operation, will it change the workflow? Yes. So I think the entire scope of work will be different, and someone will be checking grammar, someone will be checking validation of data, someone will be checking their decision, and someone will be asking what they missed in this decision. So it will change the framework, and because it will change the framework, it will obviously change the way they use everything.
Yeah, and I think we'll need a Maimonides agents to say, I don't believe what you're saying, too.
Oh, that's fine. You can say you don't believe it, say you are right.
Exactly. Martin, so from a systems and PLM architecture perspective, what processes are likely to be redesigned first? Requirements management, change management, configuration management, validation, or engineering release? Like, what process will be impacted first?
Yep. I was responsible, when I started my career in Bosch, I was responsible for worldwide change management. So I can tell you I have had a hard childhood. And therefore I am always driven by, I think a very good change management process, for me, the benchmark is like the Eigner North Wall. That is something, you know, the Americans didn't know what is the Eigner. It's called Eiger, but the Swiss are not able to spell it. Anyway, so I would like to say it's a change management process, release and change, FMEA, impact analysis, all this stupid admin process, because there we have a lot of stupid repetitive work. For example, has somebody, raise your hand, has somebody was involved to find the real affected item in a real interdisciplinary, highly complex product? That's a hard job. We did all the changes 3 times. Somebody out South Africa called, Martin, we can't do it. The machine is not able to. That because we have had no internet, we made it via fax and phone. So I think this process first to find the potential affected items, that is done by the digital thread. And then I use AI, and we have the first project. We trained the artificial intelligence, the large language model. What are the reasons to select out of the potential affected items, the real affected items? And this will be automatically transferred in the entering change request. I think the highest return of invest, I think, will be when we look into a large language model, they are better suited to help in admin processes than in real design processes. That's my real opinion.
Thanks, Martin. And then to Susanna, in an enterprise environment, how do you change workflows safely when AI introduces recommendations, summaries, or decisions that people still have to verify?
I think this is, again, giving a lot of opportunities that lots of regulated, like pharma product change processes have a lot of controls and controls and controls. But with AI, you can get recommendations that for that particular context, what might not need to be done. But I think the tricky part is that how do you educate people to really then assess when that recommendation is actually not correct? And I think that is the biggest challenge, that there's a lot of opportunity to lean the process with recommending based on the context, whether some of the activities are not maybe relevant. But if you have at the same time a changing workforce, that you don't have people staying in their roles for a long, long time, then how do you educate those people, and how do you create those guardrails that guide the people to think, when is that recommendation not correct? So I think it will take at least a while to also get that confidence that where do we even want to recommend skipping steps or removing process steps that may be redundant, but there's no clear kind of parameter that tells you that, but you still need that human in the process. Because it's very, very human to think that if I get a recommendation, I don't immediately something obvious, then I just go. And I think that's the fine balance that we're hitting.
Because we always choose the easiest path regardless, right? Whether it's the right one or not. So let's change subject again. Now let's talk about architecture, adoption, and industrial reality. Linda, from the industrial side, what's blocks scaling first? Integration, data ownership, governance, or people? No cheating from Share PLM.
Yeah. Chris told me to say that the people.
Yeah.
Well, that's the one thing. But at this point, I would like to highlight the data ownership, data governance, meaning that basically we cannot utilize the AI if we don't have the data correctly in place. And if we don't have the clear ownership for certain data, we cannot make sure that it's updated. And the governance in a way that we need to specify what kind of like a playground the AI is having. So without going like out of that playground or sandbox, whatever it is, so that the AI knows the rules, and the people also knows the rules, what the AI will use when reading the data and giving its inputs or information to the user.
Thanks, Linda. Oleg, is the winning model a smarter PLM platform like OpenBOM, or is it an AI layer across multiple systems?
I think it's none of those
None
that
of the
you
above.
mentioned. I think the point is that we work differently with this new technology, and the way we change the work will impact what will be the result. So, for example, if the agent or any task that we associate and call it today AI can be produced with the data that we have and the format that we have, then it will become a good result. Because what I think there is a huge generalization about how it works, but fundamentally, if you will go on the very basic level, we say if you can tokenize the problem, then you can produce result better with the AI technology. Why software became so successful? Because it was very easy to tokenize and find patterns. So if we will be able, if like any task you take, any problem you want to solve, if you will be able to tokenize data that you need and bring all this data for the prompt, for the context, you will be able to get good results. If you will not be able to bring this data, it doesn't matter if it's a new system, old architecture, new architecture. It's just this fundamental task is different, and this probabilistic algorithm is different, and it requires data to be tokenized. So if you go down to the definition of the problem, we will get results. If we will not, we get what we call hallucination or whatever else.
Thank you, Oleg. Martin, are companies trying to scale AI before they've agreed to who owns the product data or the process decisions?
Oh, I think decisions and yes, but what I mentioned before, I can make decisions when I do an impact analysis. I think in design, what I watched in the design support, it was people were lucky when they can handle a CAD system or Cameo via MCP with natural language approach that is not in the way in the decision. So I think in admin we can expect decision support, but the main advantage is the quality and the speed. That is, I think, the main approach right now.
Thank you. Susanna, in a regulated environment, what must be visible before AI output becomes usable?
I think this comes back to the framing that what are we deciding upon? So are we looking at managing and maintaining product descriptive information that's fundamentally used across the company to describe the product? Then we really need to be clear what are the sources and really framing use of AI with more of a trained frameworks and agents for that specific use case, and not to mix it up with these generic tools that we use in everyday. Because you can't compare with the same validity and same authority, different sources, if you compare apples and bananas and oranges in a summary of Copilot, it gives you a wrong flavor. So for those critical product information decisions, I think that's where we need to be really, really framed. What is the frame where the AI operates? What are the ground rules? And then you really need to have that skill set to maintain that when some of the rules change. And I think in the regulated industry, the path that we've also taken is we try to tie as much as possible to these emerging regulatory frameworks of how do you describe medicinal products. There's emerging ISO standard that's not fully applied yet, but we try to keep those very close to what we do, because we know that the evolution will be centered around those standards in that way. So developing anything would need to be framed into the context where the industry is moving.
Thank you. Very insightful. Rob, in real PLM programs, where would you allow AI to act first, and where would you absolutely keep a human in the loop?
Yeah, I think the obvious answer here is where the operational risk is low, but the coordination burden is high. But someone had a good analogy the other day where they said AI, when you first implement it, is like having an intern, an enthusiastic intern. So the question is really, imagine that someone dropped 20 interns at your desk and said, right, here you go, how are you going to use them? What are the operating procedures, the governance, the controls, etc., that you're going to put in place in order to get the best value from those interns, and just apply that logic to AI.
Awesome. And then to Cristina, how do you train people to verify AI outputs without slowing everything back down again?
I don't want to repeat the same answers because I'm pretty aligned with what Rob and Susanna were saying now, and it is about framing and create those, like the direction to the people to discern whether this is a high-risk scenario and then I need to have more involvement from people, or whether it's something like a summary I was mentioning earlier, and it's not so risky, right? So it doesn't mind, you can trust, basically. So I think that's the thing, like, can I trust this? And yeah.
Okay, we're going to do one last, I'll ask the same question to each of you, so everybody gets the last chance to answer, and that way we'll leave time for 2 or 3 questions from the audience. The question is, in one sentence, what should every PLM leader do in the next 90 days in order to prepare their organization to working in the era of AI? To get from the 20% to 60%, right? So what's the one thing that the leaders in this room can do to prepare their workforce for working in the era of AI?
I don't know if preparing the workforce since the very beginning, but at least they can already start actioning or identifying some workflows. They can use AI, see how AI could operate with human, and also identify what is the impact of that new way of working in the human aspect, in the people.
That sounds like a pitch for the Nest to me, but we'll just leave. Rob?
So the prerequisite for highly functioning AI is highly functioning PLM, and so it's taken Andreas 4 years to get there, and that's a very capable person and a very capable company. So I think we've got some time. Nothing's going to happen in the next 90 days, but ultimately, create the PLM right, and that's the best thing you can do to leverage AI in the future.
Linda?
I think that almost you got my point, but before adding any AI capability on top of or next to PLM, please make sure that everyone, or specify that what is needed to be in place before that.
Okay, that's fair. Susanna?
You kind of took half of my answer, so I'm going to change my answer. But I think for every leader, what I would do is create the practice in your teams that they learn to root into their day-to-day, asking 5 times why, 5 whys. Because it's super important that no matter what AI tools and help we get, that people don't switch off their brain. And I think that asking why, and why, and start over, that will be my 5 cents.
Yeah, it feels like we're giving up our autonomy every time you say, can I do that for you? And you say yes. A little more of your brain falls out. Martin?
It's hard to be at the end of the row, everything you said, but I would like to add, clean your data, build up a context if possible, and prepare your employees to be ready for AI and communicate about AI. That's my recommendation.
Oleg?
Okay, all right. So what I think is that everyone who is trying to do something with AI need to go through this simple exercise. Like if you think about tasks that you want to perform, you define them, and then you identify data that is needed to perform this task. Now, if you can map those things together, then it will give you a great opportunity to do it with AI, because first you will be your task clearly defined, which is an opportunity to explain to AI whatever that full goal, what you want to do. And then what data is needed in order to perform it. So if you perform this exercise, no matter where you go and what goes, I mean, this exercise in organization extremely useful. And again, Just connect those things together with your team, and then this is absolutely first thing to do.
Awesome. I left a good 4 minutes for questions. So do we have the mic? Maria has the mic. There's a hand in the back, and there's one over there. So there's one just behind you, and then this one over here, a third one here. So we got 3. So I have 4. 4 going 5. 5, 5, 5, 5, 6, 6. I see.
Hello. So my question is, there are many cases from business use cases where you have 2 options. First option will be that you have AI in your PLM system, but maybe that doesn't have any good interface yet, or the MCP interface is not prepared. And the second case is that the data, so you have 2 options. One, you put the AI there, and the second option is that you bring the data outside your PLM. So what would you recommend and why?
Martin, go ahead.
Once again, if you add AI on top of PLM systems, what they deliver, for me it's a decoration of a silo with AI. So my recommendation is, at the end, you should extract the data on the very thin level. With REST, they are connected with a legacy system. It's only the URL address, the item number, the name, the version, or something like that. But anyway, to bring together PLM, once again, life cycle along from end to end. You are not able with one. That's a stupid discussion with single source of truth. I was laughing when somebody told me, yes, even the Pope has, sorry, it's a Latin and Catholic land, but even the Pope, I do not believe, has a single source of truth. So you have combined different legacy systems.
Anybody else want to pick that one before? No? Okay, another question.
Thank you.
There's somebody in the back, right there. No, over there. He was next. He actually had his hand up first.
So this is kind of a question follow-up for Martin about how important the context is, the information that the AI needs to be effective. And you said it's important to have your data cleaned up and in the right shape. It is extremely cheap now to generate tons of data, right, with AI. And what we have found is once a document has been generated by AI, and it might have 20, 30, 50, or 100 pages, that actually humans are reluctant to doubt that the AI has generated something meaningful, or that there's a task on them actually to clean this data up. Same happens with generated designs in CAD, and once they have been generated, the technical term probably is slop. There's so much information that can just poison the context. And what are the strategies, the mechanisms that you have found that are effective to limit this amount of slop being generated?
It was directed to Martin, but somebody else can answer if they feel like.
I
Go
Anybody
ahead,
wants to
Oleg.
respond?
I think, first of all, the context versus generated context, I think those are 2 different things. So I think when we speak about context, and I will probably speak a little bit for Martin, but correct me, when we speak about context, it means that for the particular task that we want to perform, we want to collect all information that you need in order to perform it. So if this is all documents, you need to collect all documents. If this is extraction of particular data sources, so you need to bring this context, because if you will not give this context to the prompt, the brain, which is another name for AI, will not be able to execute, because it cannot imagine anything besides what you give it as a context. That's why when you use all the systems, they recommend create your profile, upload your specific data, define all this configure. You can do it in ChatGPT, you can do it in Claude and other systems. So why are they asking this? Because then you don't need to repeat it all the time, because it define your style, define your rules. So this is about context. So combining all this context is nothing auto-generated, again, from my perspective. Now, if there is a generated documents or generated information by AI, how to reduce the sloppiness is just to be more specific about what you want AI to deliver. This is from my practice, what I've seen, the more specific you are, what you want to get as an output. For example, there is a practice of structured queries, JSON-based queries, so you can do all this stuff. But if you're very specific, for example, you can create a prompt that will retrieve a digit, a single number of cost of the part from the catalogs online. But you need to be very specific in this query. So if this query will be specifically say, return me one number, cost of the resistor, the AI will return you cost of the resistor. And if you will tell, give me the best cost, it will return you a bunch of things that you do not expect. So it applies to many scenarios.
Thanks.
What about guardrails?
By the way, if the output is slop, then stop it or do something different.
Another question here. Was there another one over here too? I think, yeah, he had his hand up first. And then the lady in the middle, and then we'll be done.
Hi, I'm Michael.
Very
I have
quick
a
answer.
human-centric question. How do you tackle the challenge of what they call skill erosion? When you have a junior engineer, the AI is taking over the junior engineer's tasks. How do you become a senior, experienced senior engineer?
Linda or Susanna?
I don't know.
So I think it's tasks that are going to be replaced rather than activities. Like, for example, in engineering, I can't imagine that the high-value activities are going to be replaced. So I think there'll be low-value tasks that are going to be replaced. And then the question is, if those low-value tasks are not there anymore, then what are the higher-value tasks that new starters are going to have to pick up? And when you have activities that are more validation-based rather than administration-based, then how are the universities, etc., going to be providing the skills to those people so that they can have jobs when they come out of university? But I do think it's one of the biggest challenges associated with AI, for sure.
Last question here.
Yeah, Mike
Can
from
I,
Technia.
can I just comment on that one? I just want to compliment on that. I think that's really the dilemma for the workforce, that the junior roles will look different. But then how will the junior roles be still equipped to get exposed to what is then needed to skill them up to take more of those more complicated, more wicked validation or decision points? I think that's where everyone is looking for an answer. So if you have one, I think share it with everyone else.
Can I challenge this junior statement? If I may? So I think it's very kind of, I'm hearing a lot about juniors, but I think don't call, like if you imagine an AI as a person, don't call a person that read entire internet junior. So this is a mistake, taking the assumption. So that's why I think, first of all, it's not a junior person, because it's already read everything that no junior person can do. On the other thing is the task that matters, and this is where I agree with Rob. So the task might be replaced, but the people will not be replaced. So it's just a different perspective, how you think about this.
Go ahead, please,
Yes.
the question.
Thanks.
I can't hear it, yes.
Thank you for a great discussion, and Mike from Technia. When we talk about AI, it's always usually about efficiency. But does it bring also a real competitive advantage to a company? Does it bring competitive advantage to a company?
I can speak from a pharma industry perspective. I think there's a great opportunity to use these technologies to discover new ideas. Because in a complex human body system with looking for new medicinal products, new substances, I think that provides a great opportunity to narrow down the variety of different opportunities of interactions, patterns, etc. But it still will not be like solving everything. I think it still requires that curiosity and ability to imagine for the scientists to bring that together. But I think in that sense, there's a huge opportunity. I think we need to be selective where that really, truly helps to go beyond what kind of the regular, without AI equipped systems, what the science can do.
I can take
Think,
the question was about competitiveness. So it's about three things: cost, result, and speed. So if you can redefine this formula using AI, then you will be competitive. So ChatGPT redefined some of these parameters, and that's why everyone started to use it. Yes, that's if you can redefine these parameters, then you will be competitive.
Thank you, everybody. It's fantastic. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the panel. Little round of
Thank you.
applause.